Narinder Kaur. The Narcissist Cannot Stop. Hello, I'm HG Tudor. Many of you are aware of the tweet issued by the broadcaster, and I use that in the most elastic sense, Narinder Kaur, where she criticised the looks of the Princess of Wales and suggested, is this as a consequence of her smoking, even though she knows full well that she's recently had treatment for cancer and has experienced ill health. I explained very clearly that the tweet, based on the evidence, is designed to provoke. It wasn't generated out of concern. It wasn't a genuine question with relation to wanting to find out what had aged her. It was done to provoke. It's very clear why that is. I then explained that how her supposed apology video was nothing of the sort, and it provided us with a glimpse of various manipulations. I then, in a third video, explained why this individual is indeed a narcissist. And having established that, it enables us to understand more about her behaviours as we look at them through the prism of her narcissism. And also her continued activity in relation to this whole brouhaha enables us to understand more about a narcissist in action. Following on from the substantial backlash that Narinder Kaur has experienced both on social media and mainstream media, rather than keep her head down and shut up about the whole thing, naturally her narcissism needed to do two things. First of all, it needed to try and nullify the threat to control posed by the torrent of criticism, much of it legitimate, coming her way, because criticism of what she'd stated is a threat to her control, her subconscious need for control. Furthermore, her narcissism recognized that there is oodles of fuel. This is a woman who makes a living out of being controversial. This is a woman who has repeatedly in the past criticised the Princess of Wales, calling her KK Kate, with a reference to the Ku Klux Klan, suggesting somehow that she's a racist. And she has regularly utilised the language and agenda of the Sugars to attack the royal family. It's very clear where she's coming from, and her narcissism has utilised the attitude of the Sugars and their agenda as a means to undertake her own attacks upon the royal family for the purposes of seeking to control people, to draw fuel from them by way of a reaction to it, and of course the residual benefit of being a talking head and making a career out of being brought onto television shows to talk about racism and basically be a controversial figure. It's all rather transparent. Her narcissism just seizes on this as an opportunity to cause mayhem in order to get to the prime aims. And in effect, the response that she's received is a double-edged sword for her. On the one hand, she's loving the attention. She's loving the fact that she's able to go on television again, that it's all about her, that so many people are talking about her and reacting to her. However, there is the issue of the threat to control, because she wants to portray herself in a particular way, and with people criticising her, some in a constructive and sensible way, others more gratuitously, she finds her need for control being threatened and she has to do something about it. And this has resulted in her then going on Jeremy Vine's programme in order to address this situation. Now, here's an opportunity for her after having caused the storm in the first place and then having seen that her supposed apology video didn't help in the slightest. Here was an opportunity for her to perhaps now demonstrate that she's learned, as we all know, that given the type of narcissist that she is, she won't do. And in fact, what you're about to see is a narcissist who just can't stop in their behaviours. there's a short video clip taken from the Jeremy Vine programme. You'll see Jeremy Vine. There's another guest. I'm not sure who she is. I think she's called Lynn. And a Donald Trump lookalike who doesn't participate. So let's watch the footage and find out what more she has to say.
X on Remembrance Sunday. Let's have a look. And Princess Catherine had gone out on the balcony. Narinder said, genuine question, why has Kate aged so much? Isn't she only 42? Is she a smoker? It's the only explanation. And obviously the answer is she has been through it with cancer, Narinder.
Yeah. I think no matter how much I try and convince people that that wasn't my intention, they're not going to believe it. And I put my hands up. My intention, and it's in the tweet, was to say, is she a smoker? Anybody who knows me knows I'm so anti-smoking for many reasons. My dad passed away for smoke-related diseases. I do think it ages you. It had nothing to do with her cancer or whatever. It was in the tweet. I mean, I can't keep explaining it. Is she a smoker?
I've met you multiple times. I think you're a lovely person. But on social media, I think where you came out and you did that whole, in hindsight, I apologise, which was brilliant because we all get things wrong sometimes. But where you were lacking was your lack of humility. So you were apologising with one hand, but then saying, everybody asked this, I'm the only one getting attacked, racism, all these other elements. So it kind of took away from your admittance to say, maybe that was a bad
All right, let Narinder answer. You blamed the response on racism, Narinder.
Well, I blamed it on racism and misogyny and sexual humiliation. I think, Lynn, thank you for saying that. That means I feel like crying. I think for somebody who's lost her brother to cancer, and I can't even say those words sometimes, it wouldn't make any sense why I would then pick on a woman for having chemotherapy. That doesn't make sense. My brother had the worst of chemotherapy and he died. So why would I bring chemotherapy into it? Yeah. Why would I bring cancer into it? That wasn't in my head. It was about smoking, and smoking does age you. And Kate has smoked in the past.
She has had cancer, though, and she's a woman, and to bring her looks, or I think it was just distasteful.
Jeremy Vine highlights the tweet once again, and then she's provided with an opportunity to explain herself. What does she do? No matter how much I try and convince people that was not my intention, they're not going to believe me, and I put my hands up. What? You put your hands up in exasperation and despair that they won't believe you? I think what she's trying to say is, I put my hands up by way of, I admit I've done something wrong, except you don't. So you're using that phrase in a meaningless way. She continues by explaining, my intention was, and you can see it in the tweet, is she a smoker? Anybody who knows me, there's that phrase again that she used in the so-called apology video. Anybody who knows me. I've got black friends. I'm not a racist. Anybody who knows me, I am so anti-smoking for many reasons. My dad passed away for smoking-related reasons. Let's make it all about you again, Narinder. Let's talk about your personal circumstances. Smoking ages you. It had nothing to do with her cancer. It was in the tweet. I can't keep explaining it. Now understand, she does not sit there thinking to herself, oh, I know exactly what I've done. Her narcissism keeps telling her, you've done nothing wrong. It was about smoking. So she sits and parrots that. It was about smoking. I wasn't referring to her cancer. At the time she generated that tweet, she knew full well what she was doing. She knew that she was issuing a tweet to provoke. She didn't know that she was provoking for purposes of control and fuel because she's an aware narcissist. She just knew that she wanted to provoke because she knows that she likes the reaction. And she also thought that a lot of people would pile on her side, making her some kind of hero. She also enjoys attacking Catherine and the royal family, because she has a chip on her shoulder in that regard. Thus, she knew that she was being provocative, although she didn't understand the underlying reasons because her narcissism blinds her to it. Yet when it comes to a later situation, when she's repeatedly told, essentially, You knew that she'd had cancer, and you knew that's why perhaps she looks older than she actually might do because she's been unwell. That's a threat to her control, and therefore her narcissism jumps in and says, no, 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 no. It was nothing to do with the cancer. It was everything to do with it being about smoking. And that's what she genuinely believes. That's why she's incapable of saying, yeah, I know she's had cancer. It was ill-judged, ill-thought out, and it was a despicable comment. I shouldn't have written it. I apologise. But she can't do that because her narcissism tells her she hasn't done anything wrong. And therefore, because from her perspective, she hasn't done anything wrong, this means she simply will not apologise in a genuine fashion. Her narcissism says, say sorry if people were offended. That isn't accountability. She can't issue the apology because, in effect, there's a block, and the block is her narcissism. Her narcissism is not allowing her to understand what she's actually done, and that's why she keeps on saying, but it wasn't about cancer, it was about the smoking. I can't keep explaining it. She's actually thinking, why don't you all get it? Why don't you all understand that it's nothing to do with cancer and it's to do with smoking, because that's what it is. And she keeps saying that because that's what her narcissism tells her. That's what she believes it to be. Thus, she keeps stating her belief. Everybody else can see that it was cancer-related, but she can't. Hence, the guest explains to her, and I think this guest has been overly fair, actually says, you're a lovely person. Well, she's not, but there was a lack of humility. You were apologising with one hand, but saying, I'm the only one getting attacked. It's racism. It took away from the apology. That was a fair observation, and indeed was perhaps unduly fair to her. But notice, rather than recognise the legitimacy of what that guest says, and she's correct in what she is saying, Kaur's response is, I blamed it on racism and misogyny. So she doesn't acknowledge what she's been told. She actually corrects this individual by saying, I didn't just blame it on racism. I blamed it on racism, misogyny, and sexual humiliation. Why? Because immediately, when this guest is essentially admonishing her for a half-hearted apology, or one that lacked conviction, that is a threat to control. And so her narcissism causes her to deflect by not addressing the accusation that's being made by the guest, but by correcting her in relation to the fact of something that appertains to her. Oh, I didn't actually mention racism alone. It was also misogyny and sexual humiliation. She then offers a little flattery, saying, thank you for saying that. I feel like crying, which is because, of course, the guest was pleasant towards her. And then it's back to the victim mentality. For somebody who has lost her brother to cancer, yada yada, rhubarb, rhubarb, why would I do it? Well, in actual fact, you did it because you're a nasty individual that's looking to provoke. And as I explained yesterday, given the fact that you lost your brother to cancer, you ought to know better than to make such a comment as this, and the fact that you didn't makes it worse. And now you keep banging on about the fact of your father dying from smoking and that your or smoking-related diseases, and that your brother died of cancer. You're just making it all about you. You're triangulating the audience with your supposed losses and misery and upset in an attempt to deflect and to try and make people feel sorry for you. She talks about it was smoking and Kate has smoked in the past. Well, I don't recall regularly seeing Kate cracking open 40 Rothmans on a daily basis. The fact is, it was nothing to do with smoking. It was everything to do with casting doubt on whether she actually had cancer and trying to criticise her looks by suggesting that it was as a consequence of smoking and not the cancer, even though she knew full well that she'd been unwell. And when she's been called out for it, she can't even issue a proper apology because her narcissism won't let her. And then when she's slammed for the lack of that apology, what does she do? She comes on television again, lapping up the fuel and doubling down on her poor behaviour. She just cannot stop. Her narcissism fully on display. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for watching.